Alright, so in this video we're going to learn a little bit more about Photoshop. In the previous project we worked on digital art and using Photoshop to create and color and add some artistic effects. In this exercise we're going to learn how to use Photoshop for image editing. And it's probably one of the main reasons why Photoshop software was ever created in the first place. You sometimes don't get images in the best condition, and there are things you need to do to fix and sometimes enhance the images so that we can use it for whatever we're using it for in graphic design. Maybe by now some of you have seen some famous before and after celebrity Photoshop techniques. Not that I'm condoning that you go and do this, because certainly to some degree enhancing images for public consumption can be a controversial topic, because we're not seeing people in their true light. We're seeing something that's augmented and enhanced, and so does that send a wrong message to young people on what is the ideal image? But in some cases we can legitimately use image editing to fix mistakes in the images, not necessarily cosmetic, but to remove things that can be distracting. Maybe there's something strange in the background. um, maybe the colors are off. Maybe the person has red eye, and so we want to take the red eye out of their eyes. There could be all sorts of things that we can do with the image to help heal it. Let me just show you some of these examples of what can be done in Photoshop. These are done by very talented and probably experienced Photoshop artists. So over here you can see the after, and this is the before. So a lot of the cosmetic blemishes from acne or freckles have been removed. Also the eyes are much smoother and cleaner instead of having some of this dull gloss. Let's keep looking at a few others. Oh, I guess I get an ad. There we go. So this, you probably recognize some of these people. But again, a lot of things fixed in the face. I'm not seeing the before option on that. Again, a lot of age correction that's done on this image. In this case we have body that's been contoured and shaped, and also light that's been drastically enhanced, and even the angle of the head has been changed in this picture, and the hair has been changed. So quite a few, and the entire background has been replaced and moved. Here we have somebody who's been narrowed. Keep looking here. So we're seeing lines right here in the body that have been taken out, and composure in the face also changed. This is another Photoshop difference. I think this actress is Keira Knightley. So this is just more and more examples of what can be done with people to change images. And I think you get the idea, and you find these probably quite often in the magazines or advertisements. Not that I'm condoning it, but just to show you that all of those things were done very likely in this program right here that you have in front of you called Photoshop. Now for our exercise, we're going to take our own photo. Now, I have a built-in camera on my computer. You're certainly welcome to follow along and do the same thing. If you have a Macintosh, there is a way to open up the program called Photo Booth, and in the past we've shown you how to use applications to try to find applications on your software. Another way you can find it on the Mac is there's a search, like a little magnifying glass up here, and if you open that, it's called the Spotlight search, and I know the name of the program. It's called the Photo Booth. So if I start typing it, it comes up and it pulls up that application and I can double click on it to open up the application. So in the Macintosh, Photo Booth is the program we use, and there's me to take a picture of a camera. So I'm going to just change things a little bit here, and I'll take a photo of myself, and then we're going to edit it. So we got the camera right here. I look up at the camera, make a nice smile or anything I need. If I have food in my teeth, that's fine because I can Photoshop it out. And then 3, 2, 1. Alright, so that gives me a photo. And once I have that photo, I can just grab this image from the program and drag it to my desktop. So now I have access to this image. And once I'm done with that, I can close Photo Booth. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to come into Photoshop and create a new document. By now you should be familiar with how to create a new document, and we're going to introduce you to what's called CMYK. But the first thing I need to do is convert this, make sure this is inches. I'm going to choose something 7.5 by 10 inches wide. I'm going to choose 150 resolution. If you've done 72 in the past, that's the resolution for a screen. 150 is typically a pretty good resolution if you're just printing on a desktop printer. This wouldn't be enough resolution for professional printing, but if you know you're never going to need professional printing and you only need to print this on an inkjet or a laser copier, then 150 should be good. And we're going to switch the color mode to CMYK color. If you're not familiar with CMYK, it stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and key. Key is the word they use for black. Cyan being kind of blue, magenta being sort of pinkish red, yellow being yellow. And this is what we call four-color process. And so when something gets printed, with RGB we're looking at light. Usually if you're looking at a monitor, it's light going into your eyes. And the computer screen is the source of that light. With CMYK, we're seeing reflected light. So there's a different light source, and the colors that are not absorbed into the paper bounce off and we see them. And the way process works is all of this are little itty bitty dots of cyan, magenta, yellow, and key in an arrangement that's really close and tight so that when you don't look at it really close, you can see an image. If you went in with a magnifying glass or a loupe tool, you would be able to see all those tiny little dots. For background contents, we're going to choose white. Color profile is one of the most standard profiles that's used, at least in the United States, is called the US Web Coded. If you ever were working on a more advanced project, sometimes a printer may send you their color profiles. Sometimes they can email you a file and you can upload that into your Photoshop document, or you could set it yourself. But for the most part, we'll just accept the advanced settings as to what they are now. I could give this a file name ahead of time, so let's go ahead and call it, we'll follow the convention of the class MGD102. I'll do an underscore, and I'm going to just call mine tinted photo. And this is done in September of 16, and I'll put my last name in. So we always have the client acronym. We have sort of a very short description of what this is. Adding a date lets you know approximately when you worked on that project, because a lot of projects can be the same and for the same client, but you would have different time frames, so you would know which one's the most recent. And then Swanson just kind of lets you know who the author is of that file originally. When I do client work, I don't need that because I have all the files myself, but this can be helpful to identify who actually worked on the project. Let's go ahead and OK. And we have ourselves looks like I got an extra file. we have ourselves our document. Now the next thing I need to do is open up this photo. Now there's a couple different ways to open it. I certainly could go in Photoshop, File, Open, navigate to that file on my desktop, and there it is, and I could open it. Another way I could open it is if I can see my desktop, I right click and choose Open With, and it would be Photoshop. Double clicking on the file wouldn't work because my default program to open these kind of files is Preview, and that doesn't get the file opened in Photoshop. So if you double click the file, you will open a different program, not Photoshop, very likely. You can change the defaults if you know how your system works. Another way I can open this file is I can click, hold, and drag the document down to my application dock and hover it over Photoshop and let it go, and that also opens up the file. So now it's time to do a little bit of image editing. There are different things that we can use, and you can explore some of these. Some of the things I'm going to show you here aren't required for the assignment. They're just sort of a quick introduction. But right now we can change some of the adjustments such as levels and curves. I don't really have a good way of explaining this other than both of these tools to some degree allow you to make darks darker or lighter. You can make lights lighter and lighter or darker, and you can make midtones lighter or darker. And both of the tools work relatively the same. When you take advanced classes in Photoshop, you'll learn a little bit more of the differences of when to use one or the other. So let's take a look at levels first. You should get a window that looks like this, and you can see that it gives you this graph on how much you have in darks, midtones, and lights. So I don't have a whole lot of light, but I can certainly drag these little things to affect how things look. And if I wanted things a little bit darker, I could change that as well. And you can, if you have the preview button checked, you can see the changes that'll happen before you commit to them. And I can put this anywhere I want. And I just hit OK. Now I don't have the greatest exposure. Your computer camera is not necessarily the best camera on the planet, so you can see that my image is pretty grainy actually. If you took a photo with a high-end camera, this would be a lot better, and if you had your lighting in place, it would probably be a lot better of an image as well. So let's do a little bit of, I can also show you the curves. And if you use these tools, levels and curves, you got to be careful not to go too far because then you get overexposure. And that's likely not what you were going for, unless you're going for some kind of radical effect. And these tools allow you to move things around. Alright, so we'll do a couple things here. And I'm going to next introduce you on how we can fix things using what's called the clone tool. Now, this is just a quick introduction. This also will not be required for your project, but we just thought we'd let you play around with this for a little bit. But over here in Photoshop, I have what's called the clone stamp tool. And the keyboard shortcut is the letter S. So let's go ahead and choose that. And the way this tool works is it works like a brush, but I have to choose the target of what it's going to clone. I can also change the size of the brush. I might want to go ahead and make this, I've changed this to 31 pixels. And the very first thing I have to do is pick a target of what I want to fix. So let's zoom in a little bit and let's look at, and nobody ever likes to see themselves zoomed up close, but that's alright. Let's take a look at some easy things. Like here's a little glare of white in my hat. Let's say I wanted to get rid of that. So what I would do is I would properly zoom so I can see the visual information that's near this blemish. And I'm going to clone information that's close to it. And the way I do it is I hold the Option button and I get this target sign. So I have to hold that and then I click once. So that sets where I'm going to clone. See, it gives you a preview of what it's going to do before you start pressing it. So now that I'm over here, I just hit the mouse button and then you can see what it's cloning and what's been cloned. And now it's gone. Let's do another one. I'm going to change the size. I'm going to bring the size down a little bit. Maybe 15 will be good. And there's like a little wrinkle in my forehead there. I want to give myself a Botox injection. So I'm going to target right next to it. And then I can clone it. Now sometimes you have to get little targets on each side to make it look more natural. And that's always the goal, is to just make it look natural so that nobody can tell the difference. So there we go. I just removed a little wrinkle. Let's do another one. Let's see. I probably this could probably be cleaned up a little bit here as well. So now maybe I don't want to. If you do it too well, the other thing you can do is reduce the flow. So if you don't want it to absolutely copy right away, I can do it bits at a time. So I can drop the flow. Let's bring it down to about 38%. So it doesn't clone so fast. And so now I can do it in just little bursts of clone, and it's not just all immediate, because otherwise you start getting an effect where you start seeing those brush strokes of the clone tool and then you lose what's natural. So that's something you can play around with. That's the clone tool. If I was really good, let's see how good I am. I could take out this picture frame. So I'll clone here, and you notice as I'm brushing, there's a target that shows up. And if I go too far, notice what happens. I caught part of my shirt, so I would probably have to hit the undo to do that one. And maybe I have to go with even a larger brush. And you would just bit by bit work on taking that out. You can always work with the size of your brush and the flow. And there are probably people here who can do this even better than I can. And it can take a little patience, to get it ideal. And the more you can make this look natural, the more believable it is. So whatever you have for your own photo, you've probably found something that you can change and fix. And this is probably quite a bit easier than if you were to try to use the paintbrush tool. So there we did a pretty decent job. I would probably spend even more time cleaning up this area, but I've essentially moved that entire picture from the background. Alright, let's go ahead and save what we've done here. And we'll just use the default JPEG options. And now we're going to learn how to use what's called the crop tool. There are a couple different ways you could crop. You certainly could use the selection marquee tool, and you would draw the shape of the crop that you want. Now if you're pretty good at drawing your crop right away, this works just fine. Once you have this selection, you would just go to edit or image crop, and that would crop your image. Another way to crop is to use the crop tool. It's the fourth one down. We crop quite often in Photoshop, so this is a common tool. And I just draw my initial area, and then we get these nice little rule of thirds, and we can move where the crop is going to be. In this case, I want to make sure it lands on my eyes the best or close we possibly can. I'm not going to have it dead center, although it's not bad, but I could make it a little more interesting by moving me to one side or the other. But this allows me to consider negative space against positive space. If you're doing rule of thirds, we now have 2/3 positive space, about 1/3 negative space. My eyes, which are usually on a person the most noticeable feature, are on a rule of thirds line. When I have this cropped to where I like it, I can commit it by just hitting the return button. And there we have a cropped image. Now I could save this, in which case my original file gets overwritten, and then I lose, and I won't be able to go back to what I originally had. If I'm not worried about that, then I could just go ahead and make that change. But otherwise, I might want to save this as a different file name. And I'll just write my own name, and I might even denote that it's just called cropped. And that might be just something I use for one project. Maybe I don't use it for everything. But now I've got this image ready to use for my project. So I'm going to stop the video here, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at converting an image to black and white and adding a tint.